All right, our final guest of the morning is a senior leader on foreign policy and national security. Please welcome back to the Axios stage, Congressman Michael McCaul. I'm glad to see we didn't scare you off, because you were actually one of the first guests when we launched this newsletter.
I was.
So
yeah.
It's been a long time. Thank you for being here.
It's good to be here.
What is top of mind for you as we sit on this stage, talk about space security, talk about international competition, and talk about Congress back this fall?
I think the great power competition with China is, I would say, the number one threat in terms of space. When they launched the hypersonic that went around the world with precision and landed with precision, it was a real wake-up call for our military. We didn't have that capability. And to get to the interceptors and why that's necessary is because of the advanced missile technology that China has. If I could draw back, in 1997, I was a very young federal prosecutor here.
I was 3.
And I prosecuted a case, the Johnny Chun case. And the crux of the case was that China was flowing money into the presidential campaign, the Clinton campaign, and you have to ask the question why. They wanted really 3 things. They wanted satellite technology, they wanted dual-use aerospace technology, and they wanted to get into the WTO. And since that time, they have advanced it extraordinarily to the point where we're in the same, almost on the same level. When you get the classified briefing, we're still ahead, but just by a very narrow margin. So, in a way, they achieved their mission.
Mm-hmm. What's maintaining that winning margin right now?
Their investments in high technology, both advanced semiconductors, AI technology, which is going to be the future of modern warfare. You look at what's happening in Ukraine with UAVs. I passed the AUKUS bill, so we can work on AI, quantum, advanced weapon systems with Australia and the UK to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. That really, we're paying a lot of attention to Ukraine. Very important. I spent a lot of political capital on that issue. I would say Israel. I just got back from Israel. I saw, their Arrow defense system, their David Sling, their, not Golden Dome, but their Iron Dome, and their Iron Beam, which is the new technology of lasers that can intercept at a much cheaper rate. I mean, you're talking about $1 a shot versus up to $1 million. And that's what we currently spend on those things.
Do you think the U.S. will adopt more directed energy, like an Iron Beam in the near future?
Yeah.
You have to.
And I had the demonstration in Israel, and it's and a lot of these companies are incorporated in the United States. It seems to me that we could use, instead of reinventing the wheel, incorporate a lot of these ideas into what would be the Iron Dome. But then we have exquisite technologies in high orbit and low orbit space that only the United States government's capable of doing.
And so you brought up the AUKUS bill, the AUKUS Improvement Act.
Yeah.
Let's hit on that real quick, and then we can maybe go into alliances more broadly. Do you think AUKUS will survive Elbridge Colby's review?
Gotta hope so. And it has strong bipartisan support. When I saw they were going to do a review, that's fine. But to scrap this program after all the political capital we spent, and not only that, but our relationship with Australia and the UK, if that's torn apart, it'll cause grave damage in the Indo-Pacific, primarily because Australia, if you look at the geography in the Indo-Pacific, it's really the beachhead. And if you're going to put your assets, the northern Darwin, it's called, on the northern front where I've been to, is really the beachhead to counter a threat from China, which is extraordinarily real right now. And why would you scrap something like that? I mean, you go back to my dad's war, World War II, the Indo-Pacific, I don't know how they pulled that off logistically. We're going to need partners in the Pacific like Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, and other nations. And I'll say this too, if China invades Taiwan, it will look something like this. It will be a massive major cyber attack on the island. They could hit the west coast of the United States. They will do a massive jamming on the island. They'll shut all communications in orbit, the anti-satellite to blinding satellites, to jamming satellites, such that we won't have any eyes and ears on the ground if we don't have that defense capability in the Indo-Pacific. You talk to Indo-PACOM, our Indo-PACOM commander is brilliant. He just says, I just need more money. There are a lot of great things I can do. He said, there are a lot of wicked things I can do, he said, in the Indo-Pacific, but he needs the financing. And I think reconciliation has bring 100 and billions of dollars to the table now that we can put into this defense system.
If the U.S. was to scrap AUKUS, would that embolden China? Would that maybe move the Davidson window closer?
100%. I always say what keeps Chairman Xi up at night is the fact that we are now, well, two things. One, the beast of the ocean, the nuclear submarine now. We're rotating our nuclear subs in the region. That terrifies him. The second thing is the joint collaboration on advanced weapon systems with AI technology. He's desperately trying to catch up to us in AI. DeepSeek is a good example of how they invented AI. And unfortunately, going back to the case I worked on, the Chinese, they can either innovate it themselves, which they rarely do. They can steal it, which they do a lot, or we can sell it to them. Unfortunately, we sold them the chips that they used to make DeepSeek. It came from NVIDIA, not to call out a company, but that's where it came from. I worked a lot on export controls. Yeah. Why are we selling this stuff, especially stuff that could be...
Are there not restrictions on those?
There are now, but there were not at the time, and I worked hard with Commerce to get those restrictions put in place. What I worry about are some of these, the thinking that we can auction off export licenses if you give us a 15% profit return on our sales. There's no reason for us to be selling, basically weapons-grade AI technology.
And this growing relationship between China, Russia, and North Korea, how are you seeing that evolve? What are the threats of it? And does that then bleed into the space domain as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the hypersonics is a good example. I think, Russia is now falling into third place. We're in first place. You go back to the Kennedy administration, it was really not just the wonderment of space exploration. There was a military backdrop to all this. The higher ground militarily always prevails. So being superior in space means we're superior, in the world. And so that quest for space superiority, we had that for many, many years. But now we're losing ground to China, and we have to wake up to that.
Is that losing ground because of, like Carrie said, satellite production? Is that because of anti-satellite arsenals, both, or what else?
Sure. There's anti-satellite. There's also the beaming, where you can blind a satellite. Those two factors can cause a lot of damage. And so China's getting very efficient at that.
And you represent Texas. Nature, the publication, recently named it a space hotspot. What is Texas's role, maybe even your district's role in this space race? How do you see that exploding?
It goes back to the Johnson Space Center. It's amazing when you look at your iPhone, there's more technology in that phone than there was in 1969 when we landed a man on the moon. It's extraordinary to me. And we've come a long ways, but people ask the question, why haven't we been able to go back?
Or to Mars.
And Mars and beyond. Or why is the moon important? Why is space important? Space dominance is important from a military standpoint, but then there are minerals on the moon. Also, to project from the moon to Mars, that's extremely important. So we know that China's trying to get there, go back. India has developed a good space advantage as well.
And India's growing a little close to China and Russia, at least on Twitter, it looks like.
When I saw Modi with the Unholy Alliance, I call him, I just about, did you know what, my pants. It's just like, you know, oh my God.
Yes.
I mean, it was bad enough, Russia, China, Kim Jong-un, and now Modi, because Modi, I think he's doing it for two reasons. One, he needs the energy. That's why he needs energy from Russia, cheap energy. And so that's why secondary sanctions are important, I think, with Ukraine. I hope the president will advance that. But I also think the tariffs had an impact on him and is pushing him closer to China, Russia, and North Korea. And that's, to me, it's very dangerous. And we got to keep India on our side. I met with Modi a year ago, and I said, you got to get off Russian weapons systems. We're not going to sell you, I'm not going to sign off on these weapons if you're going to continue to buy Russian military. And he said, I'm just buying legacy systems or maintenance for legacy systems, not new military equipment. With this new alliance we're seeing, I don't know.
Last question before we go.
Yeah.
President Trump suggested selling F-35s to India earlier this year, I believe, or late last year. Is that realistic?
I mean, it is. We sold F-16s to Turkey, our NATO ally, in exchange for Sweden being ascended into NATO. I would not sign off on those until Erdogan
F-35s, yeah.
let Sweden ascend into NATO. But that's always a tricky deal. I remember being in Afghanistan in a Black Hawk helicopter, and the FLIRs went off, and I said, what the hell is that? And they said, those are Stingers, sir. And I said, you mean the ones we sold them or we gave to them, the Mujahideen? They said, yes, sir. So it's always a dangerous game who you sell the weapons to. You don't want them to blow back on you. I would say it's better they buy it from us than from China, because it makes them a closer ally to us rather than China.
Awesome. We're going to have to leave it there. We're all out of time. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Colin.
To you guys in the audience. Appreciate it. To you guys in the audience, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for coming out early this morning. And we'll see you